Ladies and gentlemen, my 14-year-old niece tried to convince mom to let me get a belly button piercing. No. Cause Tony practices a piano 20 minutes every day. Effect, he is a big nerd. My son playing hide and seek at my parents' house. Once when I was a little kid, my family was out at a fancy restaurant, and I ran over to the table next to us and asked the woman sitting there, "Excuse me ma'am, are you fat?" I'm never allowed to forget this. Was she fat? I have no memory of the actual event, but according to my parents, yes, she was massive. You Monster is actually so good. My friend bought me Monster cause I'm 13 and shut got me high as hell. Like I was laughing and doing stupid stuff all over the place. And my English teacher asked me, "Why are my eyes so red?" Like, "Butch, I'm high. Leave me alone." Does anyone know where I can buy a lump of coal? My kid is not naughty lol. He wrote to Santa he wants a lump of coal for Christmas. Batteries that have a bitter coating, so kids don't swallow them. Click the link. Santa. Dear Santa, how are you? I'm good. Here is what I want for Christmas. 6th graders man. As I was checking over the assignment from Wednesday, I was shocked to read your response. Please see below. After 2 science periods, you wrote mom as your paragraph. I'm not sure what you mean and find it disrespectful. Please explain. When I was 6 or 7, 1st or 2nd grade, I forget, I had this zoo book that was like ABC Animals, but they had real pictures and there were 3 animals per letter. Really cool book. I recommend it. Anyway, I was fixated on ostriches and my foreign exchange sister took note of that. She was 16. So one night at dinner, she started calling me ostrich boy and everyone started laughing. My parents, my blood brother and sister, and her. So I started crying. I slammed my head down on the table and screamed, "Why does everyone treat me like an ostrich?" It did not go well for me. Write a story problem that matches each problem. Solve the problem and show your work. 64 plus 35 equals 99. I had 64 pence. My dad had 35 pence. How many do we have? Facebook memories resurfaced this comic I made when I was 10. A tad sadistic. Today we are having gym. Really? Okay. What are we having for lunch? I just told you we are having gym. This poem I wrote about earthworms when I was in 1st grade. Elegant. Above ground. Races. Toothy. Heavenly. Whistles. Oral. Radiant. Miraculous. When I was maybe 6 or 7, a TV channel held a competition that let entrants win a huge bundle of Disney prizes if they phoned in and did their best Tarzan yell. I begged and begged to be allowed to call in, and not only did my mother let me, I actually got through. Problem was, I didn't really like Tarzan all that much and thought that a Lion King roar would be much cooler. After a while of arguing with the person answering the phone, I think they gave up on trying to get me to follow the rules, let me do a shutty roar at them, and hung up. I did not win any prizes. When I was in 6th grade, 2011ish, I was in Boy Scouts. Every month we'd go camping, and before we left, there'd be an inspection of our gear to make sure we had everything we need. It was my duty to bring a first aid kit. I had forgotten, so I grabbed what I assumed was the first aid kit out of my dad's car. The look of confusion on my scoutmaster's face when he opened the box and said, "These are jumper cables," is still fresh in my mind almost 10 years later. Almost lost my cool there. LPT. Need to divide something fairly between 2 kids. Let one kid make the split and let the other kid choose the partition. Because kid making the allocation won't know which partition he or she is getting. It will incentivize him or her to make the fairest possible split. My sister and I did this, except she would cut 3 slices. 2 very small ones and 1 huge one. Then she would ask if I wanted 2 slices or just 1 slice. Don't turn around. First time at Disney. Kings Island. On the bright side, at least we know this kid has learned how to share. Kids and fish tanks. Was reviewing my first grader son's schoolwork today and came across this gem. Sight word I. 1. Trace and write I. 2. Use it in a sentence. I will peep in a pool today. 3. Illustrate your sentence. My 6-year-old asked if Scotland is real, and I said yes, and he asked if I'd ever been there, and I said no, and he asked how do I know it's real, and to make a long story short, there's Jack Daniels in my coffee. Wonderful. Unfortunately, since kids were failing to break the chocolate to get the prize out before chowing down, it proved itself as a choking hazard. As such, the candies were discontinued in 1997. The company brought them back in 2000 with edible treats inside, but the problem remained, and they disappeared again in 2007. Toy Story 5. I'm Buzz Lightyear. I cram in pies. This reminded me of a funny story. A few days after we watched this movie called The Lawnmower Man, my older brother, inspired by it, asked me if I wanted to be a genius. I said yes, and he attached my fingers with crocodile clip wires to the Microsoft DOS running PC we had at the time. He then pranked me by making low-pitch polyphonic sounds and telling me that there was an error and it's deleting my brain. I tried to pull it out, but he said it'll delete my memory if I do. I cried. I was 6 years old. The kids aren't supposed to go in the cubbies unless they really need something, but these two girls were sitting in there looking mischievous, so I go to investigate, and they're huddled around this like manadoodle, where one of them is writing this in big ace letters. Artistic rendition. But my math teacher's son, 7, threw a temper tantrum because he ate all the food in the kitchen except for the grilled cheese sandwich, and during the sobs, he screams, "I want a boy cheese sandwich." It turns out he thought it was a girl cheese sandwich. From the local Girl Scouts to the assisted living facility I work at, dear old lady, man. Happy holidays. Me when I was 7 and told to draw myself in 20 years. A 2-picture story. Kid play Madden National Football League while on the front row of a football game. Kid's favorite game is Fortnite. Quotes from famous men. Beating Hitler was like beating little ace kids in Fortnite. They always rage quit at the end. Winston Churchill. But Winston Churchill didn't say that though, and Fortnite didn't exist until 2017. Why have food when you can have plastic straps? How Kai has a snack, dump edible snack on floor, and opt for an inedible handbag strap instead. Flashback to when I was 15, and I was texting this girl from school, and she told me how she was upset her parents wouldn't get her birth control, so I offered to buy it for her at the dollar store. Currently thinking about how, when I was 12, I had an argument with a 6-year-old over if the words kid and child mean the same thing. It all started because I called her a child instead of a kid. My 5-year-old's new favorite toy. What my daughter has learned about reindeer. They lay their eggs in the summer. What I know about a reindeer. I know that reindeer lay their egg in the summer. True story about Kid Me. I thought Hooters was an owl store. Where I live, there's a Hooters on the way to this store in Wee. When I was really young, 3 I think, my dad and I passed by there, and I asked him what Hoots was. He told me it was just an owl store, and that it was only open at night, yet I ignored the fact that there were cars parked there. Now fast forward to almost 10 years later, my mom and I passed by there, and she asks me if I know why it's called that. She explains what Hooters are, and why it's called that. I still haven't forgiven her for snatching my innocence from me. I handed my 3.5-year-old daughter her kid's meal. She gagged and said, "Ooh, I do not want to drink duck juice, yuck." Honest kids. Organic apple juice drink. In 5th grade, my friend and I had to do a project about imports and exports of countries. While researching, we found a list that had pan as an export. We had no idea what it was, so we went to ask the teacher. She told us to ignore it. Just glad we didn't try to Google it. Oh my lord, my daughter. So she goes to the bathroom and comes into the kitchen where I was and goes, "Mommy, I washed my hair." Thinking nothing of this, I say, "Cool. You feel better?" She goes, "Uh-huh, I washed it in the toilet." I don't know how to process this information right now. No wonder she was sick all of the time. A D's tip of the day: frost tastes good, Mom. When we are out on the playground and there is frost, we like to pick up pieces of mulch that have frost on them and lick them. Me, a D, that's gross. Mulch is dirty, you really shouldn't do that. A D, but Mom, you should try it, with frost on it. It tastes really good. Lol, I guess I can't argue with her if I haven't tried it. My mom used to tell me that the tooth fairy called her and told her she was getting stuck under pillows, so whenever I lost a tooth I had to put it on my dresser in my room, so it would be easier for her, the tooth fairy, to grab it. Now that I'm much older, I feel so stupid for ever believing that LMAO. When I was 5, my dad convinced me that butter came from butterflies. When he left the army, we were going to have a butterfly ranch. Mom would make the butter and I would take it to the market to sell. Then my kindergarten teacher made buttermilk and ruined everything. When I was a kid, my grandfather told me that he used to travel to Yokohama where he was fishing frogs. We live in Sweden. I totally believed him. But when I got older I realized he had only left Sweden once. Then he crossed the border, by car, to Norway and had lunch. He didn't like the food, so he went back to Sweden, and have never left Sweden ever since. Whenever the ice cream truck would drive by my old neighborhood as a kid, my parents would tell me not to go over there, because the ice cream man is just trying to squidnap you, and won't give you any ice cream. Not my parents, but my grandma told me that she gave me my birth name because it has such a beautiful meaning. I found it in a book of names. She is extremely religious. She was not the one who gave me their name. My mom did. Mom said that my name was rare to hear at the time and simple, so she named me that. My grandmother lied about so much more. That was just the tip of the iceberg. I've loved garden centers since I was a kid. To the point where, when I was in my teens, shoppers would ask me if I worked there because they had a question. I have fond memories of this one garden center chain in particular called Frank's Nursery and Crafts that unfortunately closed, but I would get excited to get and look at their houseplants and then seasonal outdoor plants. When I was a kid, I always wanted to grow up and not have to go to school. I miss going to school so ducking much now. I just miss the vibes when I was a kid. Being an adult is not vibey whatsoever. Legend freaked me out so goddamn much as a child. I remember freaking out for like a year anytime I had to walk outside during the dark. I had nightmares and freakouts regularly for way too long from that silly movie, haha. Fell through the ice in the middle of a big body of water when I was 10. Would have absolutely died if it wasn't for the man that jumped out of his car and broke the ice from the shore to the hole I was in so he could take me out. I almost drowned because my father wanted to teach me how to swim. He encouraged me to jump in the water and said that he'll catch me. Instead he just swam away and let me struggle until I went underwater. He wanted me to learn it by myself and found it very funny that I couldn't. Another man then saved me. That is actually my first memory of life. At the age of 6 I jaywalked across the busiest street in my neighborhood by myself because I wanted to pet the dog across the street. I wanted to go to the store with my mom. She left me in the running car and ran inside to grab something probably around 1998 when I was 5. I got into the driver's seat and put the car in drive. I rolled past the school, it was across the street, and hit the barrier, stopping me from going over a cliff. I was running around with my cousins over Thanksgiving. My aunt was cleaning the knife in the kitchen as I, full speed, ran through. The knife hit a button on my shirt and stopped me. I just laughed it off and went back to chasing my cousin, but she was freaking out. I wasn't the one who almost died, but once in 2021 or 2020, me and my friends were riding down my driveway with a skateboard. They weren't using the skateboard normally, they used it with their backs. Also, my driveway is very steep, so then it was my friend Levis' turn. There was a car oncoming and my mum's car was blocking their view, so they couldn't see if there was car coming. So he rides down my driveway. We all screamed "Leave!" He rolled off of the skateboard as the oncoming car runs over the skateboard. We were terrified. I will never forget what happened that afternoon. Back when I was a kid, we had to wait 9 hours sometimes for a single song to download, and if someone dared to pick up the phone, the entire download cancelled and you to start all over again. And you didn't even know if it was actually the song you wanted until it fully download, because people often mislabeled songs and movies. I was at the skate park, ended up chatting with these 14-year-old kids, and got on the topic of bullshit in school. One kid was like, "Man, did your teachers take your cell phones during class? We didn't have cell phones when I was in high school." Back when I was a kid, you had to blow on the cartridge, do a kabuki dance and sacrifice a live chicken to get your NES game to work. Me and my younger sister used to come up with such elaborate plots when we played Barbies, so much to the point that we used end up crying or fighting over the results of the drama we literally made for ourselves. Lol. Like having our own little self-inflicted soap operas. We talk about it now all the time and laugh our races off. When I was about 4 to 6 years old, I thought the scientific name for the butthole was the lipstick tube. No clue why. However, as an adult I realized it's lipstick tube without the S sound, and spelled also without the K. Yes, my little brain knew how to spell that big naughty word to make it look like real a medical term. I thought Frosty Tooths cut off their body parts and sold them. When I saw Titanic, when I was about 10, there was that scene where Jack says one of his models was a one-legged Frosty Tooth. I asked my dad what that is, and he said a Frosty Tooth is a woman who sells her body for money. Sells body for money, is missing a leg. I made the logical connection. My grandmother was really into flea markets, and she would sit around and talk about how she got great deals on kitchen utensils / merchandise. But as a child I could only imagine a bunch of flea-infested dogs and cats running around while old ladies chased them trying to catch the fleas. When she would show everyone the things she bought, like a coffee pot, I would imagine she used those items to carry her captured fleas. Up until I was like 9, I thought that gunpoint was an actual place where crimes happened. Think about it, you always hear it on the news. A man is being held up at gunpoint, tourists are being terrorized at gunpoint, and I just kept thinking, why do people continue to go there? I had a prof who told me about one of her friends who, when she was little, thought that when her dad was backing out of the driveway he used a button on the back of the passenger seat to do it. This was due to the way he would turn around with his arm against the back of the seat to see out the back window. As for myself, I was convinced that my daddy could lift our whole house if he wanted to. I also thought that when people said they were in a bad mood, that they were saying in a bad mood. I thought it was some moon force that was making them sad. As a child I loved stuffed animals. I had way too many. My best friend and I, during a short car ride, convinced ourselves that the local water towers were full of them. We wished wistfully to get our hands on those sweet soft stuffed animals. But we also realized that the tower was too tall to get them. Also, during this conversation we called it a water tower the entire time. As a kid I lived in a very religious place. My family wasn't religious, so a church was like a foreign country to me. I asked my mom what a steeple was for. She said it was so the churchgoers could connect to God. I got it in my brain that this meant skewering dead bodies on the steeple of churches so God could reach his big ace hand down and grab them. Needless to say, I was terrified of churches for a very long time. I had a relative that had a PC in his basement back when Having a PC at home was still a novel thing. I only had a VIC-20 or C64 at the time. When asked about his computer, he told me that it fell off the back of a truck. I thought it rather remarkable that the damn thing took the fall so well and worked perfectly. My aunt, who was in the Navy, used to talk to my mother about her time in Oaken, Iowa. Never could understand what was so special about a place I assumed was full of cornfields. It wasn't until many years later I discovered Okinawa was in Japan. I used to think there was a country called foreign where everyone spoke the foreign language, which I assumed was a lot of French and a bit of English. I went on holiday to the US when I was about 7, and if anyone spoke to me I replied, sorry, I don't speak foreign. My parents weren't too happy. Remember the Kool-Aid Cool World? I thought it was an amusement park or something. This was before the internet, so I couldn't check it out. I begged my grandma to take me there. She thought it was a real place too, and told me it was too expensive to get in. I was, and I guess I still am, always confused by the term friendly fire on the news when talking about war. I just kind of imagine people shooting each other, but maybe waving and asking if they were alright while doing so. I thought Palestinians were Palestinians. I thought there was a whole group of people in India who all lived in the same place and all had palaces. I kept thinking, why are these guys so angry? They have palaces. When I was in elementary school I thought during fire drills they were actually set the school on fire, so we would know how to act during a real fire. It wasn't till about 2nd grade I came to the conclusion this fire isn't gonna happen.